Catherine has 7. I have 7.
Got it? It's 7 o'clock, time for our regularly scheduled council meeting. Mike, will you call the roll, please?
Collier-Wise.
Here.
Helwig.
Here.
Holland.
Here.
Humphrey.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Ward. Wilson. Mayor Powell.
Here.
Student Representative Skunk.
Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3 are minutes. We have minutes from January 21st special meeting, January 21st regular meeting, and January 28th special meeting. Motion and second to approve the minutes as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, adoption of the agenda. John, Mike, any changes, additions, corrections? Second. Motion and second to approve the minute agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Under visitors be heard. Addressing the council. Persons addressing the council shall use the microphone at the podium. Please raise your hand to be recognized, go to the podium, and state your name and address. For items that are not on the agenda, members of the public may speak under visitors be heard on any topic not on the agenda. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and no decision will be made at this time. For agenda items, public testimony will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item. Public testimony will then be closed and the topic will be given to the governing body for possible action. At this point, only city council members and staff may discuss the current agenda item unless a council member moves to allow another person to speak and there's unanimous consent from the council. Questions from council members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the presiding officer at any time. At this point, we do have a proclamation, and Kelsey, if you would read that, please.
Proclamation recognizing February 10th, 2019 as Love Vermillion Day. Whereas Vermillion is home to spirited, progressive, friendly, generous, diverse, active citizens who take pride in their community and make it an amazing place to live. And whereas Vermillion is home to our state's flagship university and the harmonious and mutually beneficial relationship between our city and the University of South Dakota continues to flourish as our institutions grow together. And whereas in Vermillion, we've got it all: unbelievable access to arts, culture, and sports, beautiful natural scenery and abundant recreation options, top-notch education for every age, a thriving business sector that provides ample opportunities for work, shopping, dining, and entertainment, and a community that knows how to care, cooperate, and celebrate. Now, therefore, be it resolved, we, the governing body of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota, do hereby proclaim February 10th, 2019 as Love Vermillion Day, and encourage all citizens to also proclaim their love for our wonderful city. Dated at Vermillion, South Dakota, this 4th day of February, 2019.
Thank you. Would a representative, Nate, would you receive this, please?
This would be a perfect time.
All right. Let me start at the beginning. No, I'm just kidding. Again, on behalf of the Vermillion Area Chamber and Development Company, we sincerely thank you for this proclamation. A quick little brief history. I won't give you a quick story, but something that this has really grown to be something we're really proud of. A number of years ago, we talked about how we can continually spread the word of this community that we all love. And there's so many great things, we couldn't think of one way to specifically brand it and market it. And so as the hashtag portion of social media really picked up, we ultimately came up with this version of saying, okay, anytime you love what's going on in your community, post it on social media, make a picture, tell something that's really special about it, and then hashtag Love Vermillion. And so that's how we came up with that. And we've really, really been just amazed at the response of our community, the response of so many people finding so many different things that they love in this community that we all adore. And so it really has been a neat surprise at that type of marketing work. Plus, it's pretty good free marketing, so we always appreciate that. But so this type of a thing, we sincerely appreciate you continuing to support us, not only with this, but all of the great leadership that we have in this community. So on behalf of the Vermillion Chamber and Development Company and all those in the community, thank you for helping us continue to love Vermillion.
Thank you, Nate. Is there anyone in the audience that has a topic that's not on the agenda that they'd like to bring forth at this time? Any item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, council, anything that's not on the agenda? Tom, please.
Thank you very much. Now that it's February and cold and, excuse me, and the groundhog has said we're going to have an early spring, I'd like to remind everybody, as a former member of the President's Council for Diversity and Inclusiveness at USD, that this is February, Black History Month, and USD's Union of African American Students is hosting several events throughout this month. They kicked it off on February 1st. There are other events on the 13th, 15th, 19th, and 26th. So I urge people to bring our two communities together as we try to do often, and take part in some of these events for Black History Month. I'd also like to just add that as we honor Vermillion and all the benefits and all the advantages that we offer and everything, the City Council this noon began discussions on funding that we provide from the bed, board, and booze tax to the Chamber and Development Company. And so you'll hear more about that in the future as we discuss these issues. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anyone else on the council have anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to public hearings. We have none of those, so we'll move to old business. Item A, second reading of ordinance 1397 to rezone Lot 11 in Block 1, LaCroix addition to the City of Vermillion, Clay County, South Dakota, from GB General Business to R2 Residential District, property located at the southeast corner of East Cherry Street and North Crawford Road. And James, please.
Thank you. In July 2008, the city adopted its current zoning ordinance that created new zoning districts throughout the city and thus changed the allowable uses in those zones. The current zoning ordinance changed the allowable uses for general business zones and made residential units a non-conforming use. In December 2018, Mr. Archimedes Plutonium submitted an application to rezone 609 North Crawford Road from GB General Business to R2 Residential. As required by the zoning ordinance, staff created the petitions for rezone, which included all neighboring properties within 250 feet of 609 North Crawford Road. The zoning ordinance requires that 45% of the aggregate area surrounding a property sign off before a proposed rezone can be considered by the Planning Commission and City Council. The applicant circulated the petitions and acquired the necessary amount of signatures. On July 14, 2019, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve the rezone request. If rezoned to R2 Residential, the lot would be adjacent to other lots zoned R2 to the south, South Dakota Highway 50 right-of-way to the north, and two general business lots to the west, one of which is occupied by the Cornerstone Assembly of God Church, and the other which remains undeveloped. The applicant states that the property has been for sale for 4 years, and any inquiries regarding purchasing the property have been for residential use. The 2035 comprehensive plan is primarily geared towards planning for future development of the community and does contain elements for consideration. The petition before the City Council does have a strong connection to different goals set out in the comprehensive plan. One of those is to create and maintain neighborhoods that are safe, livable, and compatible with adjacent land uses. Approval of this rezone would not be a detriment to this goal. There are properties adjacent that are of the same use. However, the comprehensive plan also notes that it is the preference of the city to have business development take place along South Dakota Highway 50, as it is a highly visible area with convenient access to roadways. The Planning Commission and staff discussed the merits of this lot as a location for a business and found that the uniqueness of the lot makes it more suitable for residential purposes. This lot may eventually be surrounded by roadways on 3 sides, making access points for a business challenging, and the council approved the first reading of this ordinance at the July 21st meeting. Administration recommends approval of the second reading of 1397, which would rezone this lot from GB General Business to R2 Residential. A roll call vote is required with the second reading of all ordinances.
Thank you, James. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic at this time? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, turn it to the council for deliberation. A motion and a second to approve. This is a roll call vote, so Don, if you'll make the equipment available. The results are 9 yes and 0 no, so the motion passes. Thank you. New business, item A, a resolution to support legislative review of commercial aerial spraying statutes. And Mr. Pulse, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Powell and Council. It is my honor and pleasure to address you tonight about this most important topic, and I thank you for the privilege of addressing you. And while it doesn't, up front, doesn't seem like this would be a city topic, in the last couple of years, through my experience in looking at several things throughout the state, I've uncovered several things that were of concern, and I believe what I'm asking for tonight gives us increased protection as towns, counties, townships, in case of accidents or drift cases. As you know, I'm here tonight to ask you to approve and sign a resolution supporting legislative review of commercial pesticide statutes as they apply to commercial aerial and ground applicators. I think we make many assumptions that we assume that there's strong oversight of insurance and on the handling and transportation of and dispensing of hazardous chemicals, restricted use pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. But again, in reviewing what we would naturally assume would be required for a hazardous industry, I'm finding out that there's really very little oversight and there's many holes, including a big hole in my estimation that especially aerial applicators are not required to carry liability insurance in the state, and neither are ground applicators. Commercial, and I'm talking about just in a commercial realm. And in talking to several airports throughout the state, and also some aerial applicators, I'm finding out that what I thought was a small problem with maybe one or two companies is actually widespread. I have a relative that works for an application company, and they subcontract quite a bit of aerial spraying out in Brule and Lyman County. And talking to him in the last couple of months, asking him if they check for insurance, he says, well, they have it. Everybody's assuming that it's already required by the state and that they're carrying it. In reviewing, calling some of his applicators himself and asking for policies proof before the next spray season comes upon us, he's finding out that out of the 4 aerial applicators that he hires, 2 of them do not carry insurance. Talking to the city of Vermillion, finding out that we had an applicator here using our airport without insurance. So some of these things we just naturally assume would be required, and they're not. And that's why I'm here today, to ask you guys for this resolution that I can take to peer in support of this legislative review, and also in support of SB 148, which requires liability insurance for commercial applicators. I think it's very important that we protect our citizens of our towns, our counties, and our townships in case of an accident, in case of drift incidents, because without insurance, there's simply no real way to recoup loss. And some people would say, well, you can always sue. But I'm here to tell you that is almost impossible in South Dakota. It's very difficult. And as one former legislator and current very prominent attorney in Sioux Falls told us. He said, Glenn, you guys are, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to do anything civilly because the deck is stacked against you. The way the state investigates the cases at this time, and the way the evidence is collected, and the use of non-certified labs by the state of South Dakota for pesticide testing, he said it stacks the deck against you for civil litigation. So in all the work that I've done, it just comes back that we need to do something legislatively, and as a governing bodies, we need to add weight to that. And if I can have your weight to take the pier with me, your voice is greater than my voice alone. So I'm asking you to approve this resolution tonight, sign it, and let me take it to pier with me so that I can, when I present to the Senate Ag Committee, I have a voice of more than just myself to go. So I ask you to review the resolution, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything that you may have to ask.
Mr. Pulse, what we have is Senate Bill 147,
Yes, I'm sorry, did I misstate?
but it is 147.
Yes, Senate Bill 147, yes.
Okay, and Senator Rush is one of the lead.
Yes, we work diligently with Senator Rush. He's been a great source of help in writing it. He helped us write some legislation last year that had some further restrictions into it as far as setback requirements for spraying. We've since removed those. Senator Rush has several sponsors to this legislation now in both the Senate and the House. We've gotten a lot of favorable response to the legislation in the way it's worded now, including from some applicators that kind of want to level the playing field. They're currently paying for insurance themselves, and they're competing with guys that don't carry insurance. So I think this kind of levels the playing field for some of them also. But Senator Art Rush has been very, very good for us in working on drafting this and getting it in front of the committee.
I also think, and maybe John, you could clarify, I think our airport won't allow people to use our airport if they don't have insurance. Is that on your understanding, John?
There is an insurance requirement, but as Mr. Paul is saying, that's the same challenge that we find ourselves in is, it's a permit to operate at the airport to do commercial spraying is a company might begin to provide this service using an airport without obtaining a permit from us. And then we become in the same situation as Mr. Pulse. We're chasing them down and trying to make contacts. And sometimes their work doesn't take too long to complete from a particular airport, and then they move on to the next airport, and we're still chasing.
Thank you.
The other nice thing about the requiring insurance, if we did have the foreseen incident where a plane had to do an emergency landing, they do have purge valves on the aircraft that, and they're required by law to have them, that they can dump up to half of their load. And some of the spray planes now carry between 500 and 800 gallons of mixed chemical and water. So you can imagine if they had to make an emergency landing either at the airport or over the city or over anybody's property, jettisoning 250 to 500 gallons of a liquid chemical somewhere and then not having insurance to cover any of that damage is significant for the taxpayers or for a homeowner or a resident to pick up.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic at this time? Yes, please.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark Sweeney, resident of Vermillion and also representing the Living River Group of the Sierra Club. I just wanted to express that this has come up in Sierra Club meetings, and the group fully supports Mr. Pulse's resolution to the city of Vermillion. Seems like a common sense thing to approach, especially for the health and safety of citizens of Vermillion that may be impacted by aerial spray.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to comment on this? We'll turn to the council. Tom, please.
Thank you. We kind of look at the other side of the coin, and I look at this to us as a NIMBY issue, given the joint jurisdiction we have, and this affects places that we someday may want to grow. So we've got to take care of not just the city limits, but beyond that, due to the joint jurisdiction. It's not just Senator Art Rush who has sponsored this. Our District 17, Representative Rasmussen, Representative Ring have also joined in on this. I think that's important to point out. I don't know whether he could be here or not, but as a member, I'll tell you, the Sierra Club is very interested in this as well. So, you know, even what we use in our home gardens and our home yards has a label on it that says it's a violation of federal law not to follow these instructions. That's how dangerous this stuff is. So I think this is a great idea. This is probably not the final version in the legislature. It may or may not be, but this resolution shows that we care and we support these efforts, and with that, I move approval of the resolution.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item B, first reading of ordinance 1398 to amend Title 11, Chapter 114, Sections 114.01 through 114.05, 114.08, and 114.10 to amend the regulation governing a transportation network, drivers, and companies. And James, please.
Thank you. Approximately 5 weeks ago now, John Prescott, City Manager, and I had a conference call with several representatives from Lyft, a TNC, or Transportation Network Company, after they had expressed concern about the background check language in our new ordinance. In particular, they were concerned about the fingerprint background check requirement for their drivers. And basically, their concern was they felt that their process was better and that our ordinance was redundant in their mind. So we challenged them to provide us with additional information about their background check process, and then discussed additional language changes that we could possibly make in the city and bring forth to council to consider. After reviewing the information provided by Lyft, administration believes that a minor adjustment to some language in our ordinance would be able to reconcile Lyft's request to remove the fingerprint background check requirement for its drivers and the city's desire to assure the safety of the community. Specifically, this ordinance would remove the provision in Section 114.08 of the TNC ordinance requiring TNC drivers to submit to a DCI fingerprint background check every third year, and instead add language to Section 114.10, which would require TNCs to conduct their own city-approved local and national background check capable of ensuring compliance with state statute. This adjustment would allow for companies like Lyft, who have a thorough screening process, to fully assume the responsibility and the liability of screening their drivers, and would help require future TNCs that wish to operate in Vermillion to have their background check process also reviewed by city staff prior to having TNC licenses issued to their drivers. This ordinance would also add an additional provision to Section 114.10, which would require a TNC to provide a copy of its active South Dakota sales tax license to the city, which would help ensure that the company has a legitimate standing in South Dakota. In reviewing the draft to make changes related to background checks, I'd like to note the city attorney also offered a number of minor changes. These changes include adding additional definitions and a few language clarifications. And we recommend approving the first reading of 1398, which would amend the regulations discussed.
James, do you know, can passengers have containers? Open containers?
Open containers? No.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic? Seeing none, turn it to the council for deliberation. A motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, James. Item C, transfer of library furniture to the Vermillion Public School District. And Dan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Dan Bernston, Library Director. Last year, the Public Library received an award from the Navigant Community Connection Program in the amount of $5,000, which was to go towards youth services and programming. We used a portion of those funds to purchase some new rectangular study tables for the youth room in the library. As part of that update or upgrade, we removed a pair of cafe height style tables and the 6 stools that go along with them. The furniture had been well used over the 5 years and proved a little impractical for use in the youth room. The study tables seemed a better fit for the space. Ultimately, the school district, the high school, expressed an interest in using those tables over there in one of their classrooms. A state statute does allow for the city to make transfer of properties to other such entities. The 2 tables at this point have very limited value. They're of no use elsewhere in the library at this time. So ultimately, they would end up going to the surplus sale in May if they weren't transferred to the school district at this time. In order for the transfer to take place, it would require approval for the transfer to take place from the city council. And we would recommend that we go ahead and make that approval. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for Dan, anybody in the council? Motion and a second to approve the transfer of library furniture to the school district. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Dan.
thank you.
Item D, engineering agreement for ground storage reservoir coating project. And Shane, please.
Thank you. The water department has a 1.5 million gallon ground storage reservoir that's located on Church Street between the library and the water treatment facility. That was built in 1971. The exterior has been most recently recoated in 2004. In 1987 was when the interior was last recoated, and the ceiling is still on its original coating, so it's never been recoated. In 2017, staff drained and cleaned the reservoir to perform an inspection, and at that time we found a pretty good amount of rust coming from the ceiling portion of the reservoir. Banner was hired at that time, Banner and Associates, to perform a structural and a coating assessment on the reservoir. The report from that assessment, the recommendation was that the city at a minimum blast and recoat the ceiling. It also noted the age and blistering on the walls of the reservoir. While the walls and the floor of the reservoir weren't as critical, staff sees benefits in having the entire interior recoated at this time. Banner has prepared an engineering agreement for the interior coating of the reservoir. The agreement has been broken into 2 tasks. The first task is design, bid and construction administration, and the second task is for on-site inspections performed by a NACE-certified coating inspector. Each task has an associated cost. Task 1 is $12,500, and Task 2 is based on an estimated hourly charge. And it has a price not to exceed $33,500. The total cost for the engineering agreement coming to $46,000. The recording for the reservoir is estimated to be $360,000 to $400,000. A portion of these costs were budgeted for, but we will need to make some revisions when it comes that time. Administration recommends approval of the agreement with Banner Associates for $46,000, and the agreement has been attached for your review.
Questions for Shane?
Joe Munson from Banner is also here if you guys have any questions for him.
What's holiday testing? That's a term I'm not familiar with, and on page 2, item A, conditions, holiday
That might be a
testing.
good Joe question there.
Hello, Joe. My name's Joe Munson with Banner. Holiday testing is when they go across to make sure they use almost like a sponge type thing and go across the coating to make sure there's no weak spots in it, and that the required thickness of the coating is at every single application point. And so they go across the coating to make sure that the correct thickness is there is all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Comments or questions from council? Tom?
Thanks, Shane. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
So this is broken into 2 parts, and even so, added together, they're still below $50,000, so this does not require a bid, as I understand it. Is that correct?
For engineering?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and we're familiar, we work with Banner a lot.
Yep.
The figures that you come up with in the considerations here, there's a GSR estimate somewhere between $360,000 and $400,000 for, I guess, is that just the recoating? Is that inside and out?
It's the entire recoating, so that's the floor, the walls, and the ceiling, and all the blasting associated with that.
Okay. Is this something we need to address in our budget?
We will. I don't know what we have, but it's inside.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes, you did in your 19 budget. We were off a little bit in the dollar figure, and so your 19 budget includes approximately half of that amount. Is it 220, 230? 220, Shane?
Yep.
Thank you. There's about 220 already budgeted, so once we get that final, once it goes out for bid, we get that final amount in, then we'd ask the council to revise the budget during August of this year to provide for the balance.
Thank you. In 2017, then, we had an assessment done that said, we need this. What did that
Yep.
cost us?
That I'm not sure, but I don't believe that was very much on
But
that
that's,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't do it free.
No, they didn't, but that was, I think that was, I want to say it was around 2,500. I don't think
Oh,
that was very
okay.
high for that assessment.
Thank you very much. This is the former site of the Vermillion High School, you know.
Was it?
so it's-
Okay, I did not know that.
Further discussion? Rich?
Would this be done this year? Is that the plan?
That's the plan, yep.
Completed this year, so
Yep.
it wouldn't go into the next budget or anything?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Motion and second to approve the engineering agreement with Banner Associates for ground storage reservoir coating. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Item E, resolution authorizing the issuance of electric revenue refunding bonds. Mike, please.
In 2009, the city issued bonds for the construction of the electric transmission line. These bonds were broken down into two series, a Series A and a Series B. The Series A, a smaller portion was tax exempt and was retired in 2014. The Series B were Build America bonds, which were a taxable bond that provided for an interest refund from the federal government for the Build America bonds of 35%. Since the refunding, this amount has been reduced to a little over 32.5%. The Series B bonds are callable starting December 1st, 2019, and would have an outstanding balance of $5,400,000. I've been working with Doherty and Company about the possibility of refunding the Series B bonds to reduce the interest cost to the city based on their December 2018 estimate. If the bonds are refunded at the current interest rates at that time, there'd be a savings of $335,000. Over the remaining 17 years, the net present value of that be about $253,000, with the interest rate being 2 to 3.5%. As was been discussed, there'd be another option also at that time if the city wanted to put some additional money to reduce the outstanding principal. We have the SPP funds that we're receiving from the transmission line. If some of them funds were applied, we could reduce the outstanding debt and also have a larger interest savings over the remaining life of the bond. This information was presented to the council on January 7th at the 2019 at a noon meeting. Since that time, we've had a resolution prepared by Bond Counsel Dorsey and Whitney that's attached. Just a little bit on the timing. These bonds cannot be called in more than 90 days prior to the December 31st date, which would be September 1st. It would be the first day we could close on a bond issue. The interest rate can be locked in 60 days in advance of the September 1st date, or bringing us back to July 1st. Takes about 60 days to get the documents and stuff ready, which would bring us back to about May 1st. And if the resolution is adopted tonight and published next week, the 20 days would be effective March 18th, that we could start then moving forward with getting the paperwork ready to hit that timeline to have information ready to consider refunding. The cost right now would be the publication of the resolution. If the city council would proceed with the refunding later this year, the legal as well as the underwriting fees would be included in the refunding. One thing the city will need to work on also in this time frame here is if it wants to use part of the electric reserves from the SPP funds to apply to the call to reduce the bond even further. Administration recommend adoption of the resolution authorizing the issuance of electric revenue refunding bonds to allow for the option to reduce the interest over the remaining life of the bond.
Thank you, Mike. Comments, questions, council? Sounds like a smart thing to do.
I think this is a great idea, especially with using the SPP. Anytime we can pay off bonds and reduce this and move things up, I think it's good for our taxpayers, so I move approval.
Motion in 2 seconds to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of electric revenue refunding bonds. Any further discussion? You mean you're calling the question to vote, or you have a...
No, I have a question,
Okay.
discussion. Now, do we have to, in the motion, say about using the SPP funds, or is that included in?
We will probably come back and ask for a motion. Whoops. Our recommendation would probably be to come back later, probably by the May to July timeframe, to get a commitment from the council as to how much money, if they want to do the 2 million that we'd have on hand, and probably also the approximately 700 to 800 we get in future years, if any of that would want to be committed to future debt service for that, to even retire it faster. And I'll try to work to get some numbers so that you have some information to base them recommendations on.
Does that answer your question? Anything further? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Item F, resolution to designate disabled parking along Kidder Street. Jose, please.
Thank you. City received, the city was contacted by United Way of Vermillion to see if the city could actually designate a parking stall close to their new location for handicap access or for handicap parking. Due to typically the city actually designates or tries to designate parking stalls at corners in the downtown area for this. In this instance, the city is actually looking into, or staff is proposing to designate the first stall on the north side of Kidder, west of Court, for handicap access. And then in the future, if necessary, then this area here could be designated for, hashed out for van accessible as well. So usually that's what we try and do as far as the downtown area. We do have an existing handicap ramp in this location, so that lends itself very well for that. This parking stall, even though the request was made by United Way of Vermillion, it would not be designated just for United Way of Vermillion. It would actually be open to the public. So whoever needs to use that parking stall would be able to use it at that point. As far as costs, the city would only be incurring costs for a new post and the sign itself. With all that being said, administration recommends adoption of the resolution designating the first stall on the north side of Kidder Street, west of Court Street, as the disabled parking.
Thanks, Jose. Council? Motion and a second to approve the resolution to designate disabled parking along Kidder Street. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item G, resolution to designate a loading zone along Court Street. Again, Jose, please.
Thanks. The city, again, we were contacted twice, I guess, by United Way. This time, they were actually looking to see if there would be a possibility of the city designating a loading zone close to their new business. One thing to keep in mind is that even though this area here would be where their new, I don't know what you want to call it. Yes, I even put it in there. The Community Connection Center, the CCC. One of the things that they're going to be, or that they will be doing is they're actually going to be gathering all of these different entities within the community to have a central point of service, I guess, if maybe I'm not saying it right. But in one of the items that they're going to be facilitating would be the Vermillion food pantry, or assisting with. The food pantry, as you can imagine, they typically may require a loading area as far as people may be going to their cars with groceries and so forth. And just to make that a little bit easier, the city would be, staff is asking the council to designate the first stall just north of their door as a loading zone. It would just be one stall. It would actually be, for description, it would actually be the fourth stall on the west side of Court, just south of the alleyway, the east to west alleyway. Again, it would just be one stall similar to the parking, the handicap parking. It would be accessible to anybody from the public. It's not just going to be reserved for the United Way of Vermillion. So anybody could use it if you're going to be going over to the steakhouse. You could use it if you have to go and pick up, make a delivery, whatever the case might be. Again, similar to the previous item, the city will be incurring the cost of the post and the sign. With all that being said, administration recommends the adoption of the resolution designating the fourth parking stall on the west side of Court Street, south of the east to west alley as a loading zone.
Thanks, Jose. Council? Howard?
I have a question on the loading zone. Do they need that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Because I know there's a couple signs, used to be a couple signs on Main Street where you had 15-minute parking, but you had a time zone on it from, I think it was from 9 to 5 or something like that.
I guess as far as the timing wise, that would be something that if the council so chose, there could be a time restriction to it. One thing that I will caution is that we don't have, it's not policed, I guess.
Right.
So it's more in the honor system, but that would be a possibility, yes.
Yeah, well, I don't know, would the time bother?
I would say that the entities that are going to be contained don't necessarily keep normal business hours. The welcome table, which would probably be using that area for transit drop-off and things like that, is Monday evenings from 5:30 to 7, and then food pantry does also have some evening hours. So certainly we wouldn't need it overnight, but the daytime hours would
I
probably...
was just thinking for the restaurants who only have the evening hours, it would, but if they use it, then leave it 24 hours a day.
I think it would be used in the evenings enough that it might be difficult to name all the times when you did and didn't have it.
Rich?
Council, don't go too far. Would this also be an unloading zone?
Yes, my understanding it would also be people doing deliveries and things like that could use it as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's not just, yeah,
Well,
it's not
that
just
being-
for loading.
That being the case, and especially with the construction people there now, that's not big enough, because most of the time it's a truck.
Well, it's not meant to be, we're not intending on having a semi-park there necessarily. It's just going to be, it's intended mainly for a vehicle. Myself, let's say if I'm going to be going over to the United Way, I need to load up some groceries. This is an easier way for me to park rather than parking by the parking lot.
Oh, I agree with that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about somebody who's unloading, and they probably be more than the car load.
Yeah, well, you have to still fit in there, I guess, so.
And certainly when like Feeding South Dakota trucks come, and those are semi-trucks, they would probably do the same as the delivery trucks that deliver to Red, to Hartford, to OLC, and to True Value while it was there, which is to park in the middle of the street and then move on.
Thank you.
Just maybe a little explanation. The way the food pantry works now, there are volunteers who spend a lot of time there, and they go around and collect quite a bit of food to bring in. They need a spot to unload. You know, right now they're using a big parking lot with double doors and everything. And there's also people who usually use carts to take food out of the food pantry and to take home because of their needs. So I'm guessing that's the main thing. But the food pantry has hours, and after a certain time, there aren't people. In fact, there are times when it's been closed. I don't know what your plans are, but and when you mention semi-trucks, for many, many years, we've had trucks that sell beer park in the middle of the street to do their loading and unloading, and somehow they get it in the door. But I don't want this to turn into, we need a loading zone in front of every other store or something. So something to think about.
I think specifically the food pantry in particular, their concern was people who had groceries and didn't necessarily want the carts to be taken far down the street or for those who are elderly or disabled to not be able to load their vehicles with the food. That was their specific interest. I think there would be other ways that it would be used, including probably by some of our neighboring businesses, but that was the main intent, was for those people to be able to load their groceries without having to push a cart down the street.
I think Howard has a good point, though, about certain times.
Are you open Saturday and Sunday?
Current hours are not established.
Because I was wondering if it would just be during the week or if it would be Saturday, Sunday also.
At this point, I can't tell you what the schedule will be. Right now, a lot of the schedule for the food pantry is based around the current location, and we know that we're going to have to make some adjustments in the new location. So I can't foresee exactly what it would be in the future. There is Saturday hours right now in the current location.
Steve?
Jose, if we wanted to change this at some time in the future, would it be a similar meeting as this? We could propose a change to it if there was some problem. Okay, so this isn't we're not setting this for 50 years. So I move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
We could be, Jose, is this photograph that you gave us, is that accurate as far as, in other words, there's no stalls near that alleyway, no parking places, is that right?
Yeah, that is, I actually went out and counted it.
Just out of curiosity, why didn't you consider there for the handicap?
I'm sorry?
Why didn't you consider there, right next to the alley, for the handicap? It would make it a lot more accessible to the...
Because in order for me to have a handicap access or parking stall, I actually also have to have an accessible route, and the alleyway then gives me more issues because now I have an approach to deal with, and that might not be ADA accessible.
Thank you.
So.
Anything else? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Jose. Item H, resolution authorizing the purchase of a street department vibratory compactor. Jose.
Thank you. At the budget session in August 2018, the City Council, one of the things that the City Council budgeted for was a vibratory compactor for the street department. This piece of equipment is actually used by the street department to compact a material placed on street repairs, and other times that could be either asphalt or gravel or any other base material. Staff would like to take advantage of an attractive quote or bid from Sourcewell, which was NJPA. The city received 2 bids. One of the bids was from Butler Machinery for a 2019 Caterpillar CB24 utility compactor for $39,109.90. This bid also included a trade-in value for the city's existing 1994 Bomag BW 128D2. Compactor of $4,000. The second quote that the city received was from DMI from Sioux Falls for a 2019 Bomag BW 128D-5 for $40,990. DMI's bid also $40,990 also included a trade-in value for the existing compactor of $9,000. The equipment replacement fund does have $52,000 for this equipment purchase. The savings will remain in the fund and be used to purchase other equipment. Administration recommends approving the resolution to purchase a 2019 Caterpillar CB24 utility compactor and trading in the city's 1994 Bomag BW 128D-2 compactor to Butler Machinery for a net price of $39,109.90, and allowing the city manager or city finance officer to sign the purchase agreement.
Thanks, Jose. Council? Motion and a second to approve the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
Bid openings, fuel quotes you have in front of you this evening. Mike?
The first quote was for unleaded gasoline from Stern Oil, was $1.86.6 cents. Item 2 is 3,000 gallons of number 1 and number 2 dyed diesel fuel. Average price is $2.2225 cents. Item 3 is 1,000 gallons of number 1 and number 2 diesel fuel cleared. The average price is $2.51.9 cents. Second quotes from Burnick Service on item 1, $1.90. Item 2, $2.27. Item 3, $2.53. Stern would be low on all three items.
Council? Motion is second to accept the low bids. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. City Manager's report. John, please.
Excuse me. Thank you. The second opportunity to participate in the Heroes Behind the Badge blood drive is this Saturday, February 9th, and that's from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the USD Sanford Health Fair. That's at the corner of Clark and North Dakota Street there. And donors can vote for the police department or fire department in this friendly competition. You might have seen, hopefully, recently our intern, Cody Sen, he completed and issued a press release about the recycling numbers for 2018. And I won't go through all those numbers, but we want to take a moment to thank our residents and businesses for participating in the curbside program or using the recycling trailers that we do have around the community. Over 2.2 million pounds of recycled material were processed through the recycling center in 2018. The average per residential curbside participant was about 138 pounds of recycled material. So we appreciate Cody doing all the work, working with Tim and the guys to put those numbers together and encourage our community to keep up the great work with recycling. Just a reminder, the next City Council meeting is on Tuesday, February 19th, and that's due to the President's Day holiday, and Monday, February 18th, same time, same location, just different day. And then just a reminder for our Labor and Finance Committee members, they have a short meeting coming up following this meeting.
Thank you, John. Questions for our City Manager, anyone? Okay, and we'll turn to invoices payable and ask Mike any questions that you might have. Mike, number 90 with Mart Auto Body, how does that work?
This is if the police department has cars towed into the impound lot. When the individual comes to claim their car back, they pay the towing fee, and then we reimburse that to Mart's.
So it's just a pass-through?
Yep.
Okay. Any comments or questions for Mike? Motion is second to pay our bills. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. We have no consensus agenda, Steve. Motion to adjourn and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're adjourned. Thank you much.